Digital Talk.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Cindy Laverty Show on CRN Digital Talk Radio. Thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining us, my guest today is David Kessler, and we're talking about his new book, Visions, Trips, and Crowded Rooms. Who and what you see before you die. This is fascinating, and if you're like I am at all, you're going to be very hopeful about what happens to us at the end of our life. David, thanks so much for being here, especially being in studio with me. All right, you were going to tell us a story of a trip.
Yes, there was a woman-grown adult daughter, and her dad was in hospice, and she's sitting at his bedside, and all of a sudden he says, "Is a car here?" And she goes, "Yes." And he goes, "The car's outside." She goes, "Yes, Dad." And he goes, "We're going to have to make a run for it."
Oh.
And she goes, "What?" And he goes, "We're going to have to make a run for it. Help me out of bed." And so she helps him to the edge of the bed, and he's sitting up. And he goes, "Now, this is important. This is a big journey coming up here. This is a big trip. Are you ready?" And she went, "Yeah, I guess I'm ready." And he goes, "Because you're going to have to run." And she went, "All right, fine, I can run. Can you run?" And he's sort of huffing and puffing. He goes, "Well, give me a minute." And he's sort of sitting there on the edge of the bed, composing himself and just trying to catch his breath. And then he turns to her and he says, "Lay me back down."
Oh.
And she says, "Okay." And she said, "What happened?" And he said, "I just realized I'm going to a place where you can't go yet. And it's not time for me. And it's certainly not time for you." And I love the idea that she went with it.
Yes.
That she didn't go, "Nurse, quick, let's sedate him. Let's tie him down. Let's do something." She went with it and just, let's see where this goes and what this is all about.
Right. Well, let's talk for a second, speaking of going with it. What do your skeptics say? Because you must run into a lot of skeptics.
Absolutely. So, and sometimes they come to the lectures, which always amazes me, that they sort of pay to be a skeptic.
Well, they're curious to be a skeptic.
They're curious. So I always describe myself as an end-of-life care reporter. I know that everyone's not going to the bedside, so I'm going to tell you what we see there and report back. And I tell skeptics, if all of a sudden people who were dying started saying they were seeing blue trucks driving backwards, I'd be asking, why is this happening? Why is everyone talking about blue trucks driving backwards? That's not what they see. They see visions, the trips, the crowded rooms. So that just happens. People will say, "Isn't it oxygen deprivation?" Well, we see people who are a week out, a month out from death, who have no oxygen compromising. We also are able to measure oxygen now, how much oxygen someone's getting. So there's
very
plenty of people,
easily we can measure
plenty
that.
of people who are getting fine oxygenation. So we know that's not always the story. People will say it's the pain medication. Many people have these stories who did not have any pain, were not on pain medication, and they still have visitations from loved ones who have died coming to greet them. The other thing that's fascinating is people will say, "Well, I just believe that this is how the mind breaks down and sort of disintegrates at the end of life." And you may have heard or seen a very interesting movie that was out Hereafter with Clint Eastwood did it, and Matt Damon, and I helped work on part of that. And my counterpart in that movie says, it's too striking to think that all minds in so many places of the world could have the exact same experience.
Of course.
And these stories are strikingly similar. You'd be so surprised how identical they are for people who don't talk to one another.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same as with people who have near-death experiences and they leave their body and they see this white light and then they're kind of bummed out when they come back into the body.
Except, think about it, they're here to tell their story. Oh, I was hit by the lightning.
Right.
People who have deathbed visions go on to die.
Right.
And they don't tell the story unless the doctor, nurse, or family member or someone in the room, or me, tells their stories.
But I think when you talk to hospice personnel, all the people who work in hospice.
Or intensive care nurses, that whole group.
This is just a universal thing that they don't even really question.
Absolutely. Just happens all the time, matter of fact.
So what's wrong with the rest of us?
And a really good hospice, and we certainly are a really good hospice, the way someone's admitted to our hospice, how we talk to the family. Your loved one may be in this situation. We're going to make sure we have pain medication standing by. We're going to make sure we have symptom control standing by. Just know your loved one may also have some visions. And that's normal and common.
Do you tell them that?
Tell them that up front.
Oh, I think that's very smart. And you say in the book that no one ever experiences a vision outside of their own religious faith.
I was so curious to see what role religion would play in this. And it's just like you say, that what we see is always within our own religion. You know, a Jew does not see Jesus. A Christian does not get greeted by a rabbi or Moses. So we don't know why or how that works, but it's obviously within our own belief system.
Is it, do people who are, I don't know if you know this or not, but do people who are religious tend to see more visions, or is it spirituality, or is it this universal sense of, you know, the universe?
It's a great question. It's random.
Really?
People who have visions are no more religious or no more spiritual than other people. It's fascinating to me. It's sort of like if you and I just went out to the street and started looking at people walking by and said, are you more spiritual than me, or am I more religious? We'd go, it's sort of irrelevant. People are walking by.
Right.
And I think that's what it's like, because if anything, plenty of people have no religious beliefs or spirituality and still had visions.
Okay, so do you find that these people who may have been atheist or agnostic and all of a sudden at the end of life they start to see visions, does something happen? Do they become a little more spiritual? I mean, if an angel shows up in your room...
You know what? I think in that moment they seem to be at peace, realizing there's more.
Yeah.
I think, you know, religion and spirituality is sort of a framework we use here.
Yes.
I don't think as you're dying, you know, if your mother comes to greet you, who you haven't seen in 30 years, or an angel appears in the room, I think an angel just appeared. I don't think we sort of review religion in that moment. Oh, so it is real.
Right.
You know?
I think it's very interesting also that people can be actively dying and see a vision of someone who, a brother or a sister who they didn't know.
Those were fascinating stories to me. The people who saw, you know, someone who's Bert, and they'd never met a Bert. They didn't know a Bert, and all of a sudden they found out that the family checks later and finds out there was a Bert who was the brother that died that no one told them about.
Right, or the sister who's in the nursing home and nobody knows she just passed away, and all of a sudden she's there to cross over. It's amazing. Stay with us. You'll see the Cindy Laverty Show. I'll be right back with David Kessler.